I'm Jason Brett, and I want to welcome you to Product Coffee. For the first half an hour or so every week when we start Product Coffee, and for those who are here at 7:30 Eastern, we do a little bit of a roundtable networking, introduce ourselves to each other, get to know each other a little bit better, and we talk about issues that are at the top of our mind on any given day, and help each other out with advice and perspective and experiences. And that's really kind of the essence of one of the things that we're trying to create here at Product Coffee is not just this isn't just a sit and pay attention to a type of a session. This is a networking event for product management professionals to get to know each other, to find colleagues that can help you grow in your career and help you create radical impact in the company that you're working with. So I want to start off today. We're gonna get into our program in just a moment, but I wanted to take just a quick moment to pay tribute and give a little bit of thanks to some of our sponsors. We have 3 sponsors at Product Coffee, and I want to take a look at them. The first sponsor I want to give thanks for is Pragmatic Institute. Pragmatic Institute has been sponsoring Product Camp Atlanta and Product Coffee since the very beginning. Back in 2009, when we first started this, they were Pragmatic Marketing at the time. They've jumped in and supported us every way. Pragmatic Institute is a certification and training company for product management professionals. They offer the industry's most recognized product management certification courses and process. We've got some sessions a few weeks back on the YouTube channel at youtube.com/productcoffee that talks about some of the different certifications that are available. And you'll see that Pragmatic, and that was an unpaid session. There's no sponsor. There's a sponsor. There was no any kind of a paid promotion for that session, but you'll see the conversation continuously comes back to Pragmatic Institute's recognition as kind of the premier, the leader, and the most recognized in the space. So check out Pragmatic Institute. I would appreciate you looking at their website, checking into them. They support us, so please support Pragmatic Institute. You'll see a new logo here in the middle of the screen. Method this week is not a new sponsor, but it is a new name. Skookum, who has been a sponsor since early on in the days of Product Coffee, announced our final merger and rebranding this week with our sister agency, which is also a global logic company, Method. And Method was based in New York and London. And Skookum has had offices in Charlotte, Denver, Atlanta. So now we're one agency under the Global Logic banner. We handle strategic customer experience and digital transformation strategy, as well as custom software development. We provide end-to-end solutions, everything from innovation to design to delivery. If you'd like to know more about what we do, you can reach out to me or Jeff, and we'll be happy to share some of our capabilities with you, get to know you a little bit, and talk about some of the things that we've done for our clients. While Method is a sponsor, Product Coffee is an independent event. So I want to thank my employer for also supporting this endeavor. And the third sponsor is Feature Upvote. And they provide some software that's great for product managers to get real frontline voice of the customer feedback. They provide a piece of software that allows you to collect product recommendations and suggestions for your own roadmap online. You can go to featureupvote.com, or you can go to productcoffee.com/ideas and see it in action. We take suggestions from you using this software to understand the type of topics you'd like to hear us talk about, have sessions about here at Product Coffee. You can vote on other people's suggestions or make your own suggestions. And that helps us prioritize the kinds of sessions that we present here at Product Coffee. So please check out featureupvote.com as well. Let them know that we sent you. But today, we're going to be doing our monthly product management roundtable. This is a little bit different format than our normal format. This is a true town hall roundtable type discussion. I'm going to throw this topic out here, and we're going to see where the conversation takes us, and have some discussion as a team to develop some new insights. We're going to be talking about balancing innovation and daily execution. In the weekly registration for Product Coffee, I always ask, What's on your mind? What's a question that's on your mind? This question came up a few weeks ago from one of our participants who said, how do you balance this idea of innovation in product management? We're really busy. We're always doing lots of things. How do we balance the need to actually innovate with our constant demands, our tactical demands on daily execution, going through the daily execution task, grooming the backlog if I'm down in the weeds with the trenches, or dealing with sales inquiries? How do I actually make time and create balance in that process? So the first thing I thought I'd start that discussion with is just getting a shared understanding of what we even mean by innovation, why it's important. So I thought I'd start with that. What does innovation mean to you?
To me, innovation is creating something new at its like sort of first principles nature. Um, it can be a new feature, an entirely new product, a new line of business, a new area of focus, a process, anything. Like it doesn't have to be the next iPhone. It can just be a better way of processing customer orders to reduce time, right? So anything you're doing to improve the process, or to improve anything really, I would argue is some form of innovation. And what's usually meant when this dichotomy is put up of how do I balance the tactical with the innovation, or the tactical and strategic and all that stuff, is like, how do I keep up with keeping product requirements up to date, or stories, or whatever the version is of communicating with developers that you have? How do I have enough work for the developers while still making time to look out beyond the next 2 weeks, or beyond the next 6 weeks, or whatever your timings are? How do I figure out what I'm supposed to do a year from now, or whatever, again, future time horizon it works for you? How do I even make the time to talk to customers to understand the problems that they have, when not all I have time to do today is answer developers' questions? The answer to that question varies depending on the level that you are. If you're, a brand new product owner working with developers every day, you don't get that much time to do that stuff. And you have to figure out ways to carve out like a 2-hour block, or some kind of focus time on your calendar to think and not react, and make sure you do things like turn off notifications, block your calendar with do not schedule markers, like whatever you need to do, and communicate to your teams that for those 2 hours as focus time, I need you to not bother me. Mm-hmm. If you're the higher up you go into leadership or broader scopes, or whatever it is, the more important it is that you make that time and try to do less of the extreme tactical. But yeah, it's like every human has a natural tendency towards one or the other of those extremes, in my experience. Some people just like to get the things done and focus on the tactical and feel the sense of accomplishment of checking a thing off. And some people don't like to get caught up in the weeds and like to think strategic and big picture all the time, and get frustrated with the day-to-day. I'm probably more in that second category than the first. And so understand your tendencies in that, and set up structures and things to force yourself out of your comfort zone into the other half.
Set up tendencies and habits, force yourself outside of your comfort zone so that you create that balance. That's great advice. I've been using a product for about the last 6 months called Reclaim.ai. It's free through the end of the year. Actually, they're a startup, but it's great if you have the ability to use G Suite or Gmail at work, and you can use their calendar. It's a plugin, and it lets you create habits that it automatically schedules time. It looks for time in your weekly schedule for you to do things that are important. And you can set up, like, I want to set aside a minimum of 2 to 4 hours once a week to just not have any other work on my plate. And it also, it schedules lunches for you as well, which I really like. And it keeps a bunch of calendars in sync. I love this product. It's free. I'm a huge fan. Check it out. It has me to automatically block that time that you're talking about, John. Jeff Meddy, you got some thoughts. Let me hear what you got to say, bud.
Yeah. So, I agree with everything John was saying. It's anything new. And one of the things that we've found helpful, a lot of times is, and this goes, I think this originally comes from the Clayton Christensen Innovator's Dilemma piece, but it's breaking it up into sustaining innovation versus disruptive. So like, what do we need? What are the new features? What are the new products? What are clients asking for? What are the competitors doing? What do we need to do to keep the lights on? And that's kind of one train. But then there's another train of innovation that is really, what is disruptive? What are they not asking for? How are we really going to change? And a lot of times we find it helpful to kind of separate into those different categories of innovation. And sometimes it's different teams. Sometimes it's a different amount of focus on one area, but the organization has to have a certain level of appetite if you're going to get into disruptive innovation. It's more of an R&D budget than a sustaining.
Yeah. Right. That's a good thought and a good observation. And I want to come back to the general topic of disruption if we get time today. And disruption versus innovation, because I think that's a really good that's a really good discussion if we get to it as well. I saw Amy Sharma is with us today. Amy, I haven't seen you so long. Glad you could be here, and you got your hand up, and I'm really dying to hear. Amy is our resident digital scientist, resident scientist. And so I think she's got a little bit of experience that might be really worth hearing from. Amy, bring it home.
Oh, thanks, Jason. It's good to be here again. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Amy Sharma. I'm with Science for Georgia. I definitely agree with John in that there's most of us sit on either the we're checking things off or we're ahead in the clouds all the time, like thinking 3 years down the road. And that was always that's always my biggest problem in terms of I need to get these 5 things. I need to get this done today versus I really want this to happen. And it's like this magical unicorn reality that I'm aiming for, right? And so one of the things I do is this was the dilemma we heard with sales, like when they're selling things that aren't on the truck already is, I keep a great big list of like magic things, right? And then those get compiled into these are things we must have because these are things that our competitors have. And so that's not so much innovation, but it still needs to make it on the roadmap. And then, yeah, you need those 2 or 3 hours of uninterrupted time to like look at the list of all the things that the customers have been saying and everything and then that helps you think about what are they not asking for, right? Like that's the big thing. What are they not asking for? And what do they need? Like, so, and then that drives your innovation in terms of, I'm seeing a bunch of things that all relate to this thing. What if there's a different way that we could do it, right? And so you always need something shiny. I always like something shiny to kind of think about, right? Because that's the thing that gets the developers excited too, right? Because if they're just constantly making new tweaks and making the buttons purple instead of green and things like that, they get bored as well, right? So like, hey guys, like what's a thing? So it's also a thing to bring up with the development team. Like the customers have all been asking this same general thing. Do you have something about that, right? So, but it is hard. The worst part is finding those like 2 or 3 hours where you're like, no one bother me and leave me alone and I need to get this done, which thankfully, since now that we're all working at home, probably a little too much, like that was definitely the time where it'd be like, I need to take this and not be in the office. So that way no one would actually see me.
Yeah. Get out, hide. Think. Another book I read actually that was really big on that topic of just carving out time distractions was called Deep Work. I can't remember the author on that. I'll have to look that one up in a minute. But
Al Newport.
Thank you, John. Hal Newport, Deep Work. And it was, a bunch of case studies. It actually talked a lot about also this notion of open offices versus having private space to work and creating the right balance there as well, and how that impacted our ability to get down and really do some real synthesizing or synthesizing of the things we've observed. Diego Florentine, welcome. Why don't you jump in here and let us know what you're thinking?
Yeah, so glad to be here. This is my first meeting too. So in regards to innovation and how to balance it, what I found that it's been very helpful is to always focus innovation around solving a specific problem, right? So it's not only, and you are not going to solve it by yourself. So you need to foster some collaboration, and that can help you to remove some of those distractions, because you need to bring some key people. Eventually you will identify a good designer who is coming with very good ideas, a developer who's open to explore different approach, and if you set aside those time to solve a problem, and you have it booked frequently, you have this continuous innovation process in place, and it's not an abstract thing, just like saying innovation. You're working on something productive.
That's a really good point too. Thank you for saying that, Diego, and welcome. I'm glad you could join us today, and great to jump in here and contribute. Thank you. The whole notion of finding the right problem to solve and making sure that you're thinking about the right problems in general is a huge part of effective innovation. Completely agree. The week of May 26th, we're actually going to have our good friend from formerly from Pragmatic Institute, Steve is going to be here to, and now with Under 10 Consulting, and he's been a regular here at Product Coffee as well. Steve is going to be back, and we're going to talk about specifically being problem managers versus being product managers. So it's going to be a great topic. I hope you can all join us for that. Charlie Smiley, welcome back. Good to see you, my friend.
Hey, man. Good. Thank you, Jason. Appreciate it. So glad to be back. I know some of the times, I apologize. So you were shifting the times there, trying to find a good fit. It was hard with some of those times, but and just busy with life. But hey, the thing I wanted to bring up was there's an expectation of the organization as well. All product managers are not created equal. And I think everybody has talked about this very well. Like, you have product managers that are like, who, Amy, maybe you said, are in the clouds, and they're the ones that, oh, I want to go do this strategic thing, but they're no way in hell going to deliver the tactical things that need to be done. And then you've got these tactical product managers who are great on execution, but may not be. And I personally have struggled with this. I kind of bounce back and forth. I lean more toward a tactical side, and then I have to kind of go and shift my mindset. My point being is that I think it's really an expectation of the organization, because not only are not all product managers not created equal, but the organizations don't know a lot of times what they want in a product manager. They want somebody to be that strategic person, but then they realize that, you know, it goes back to the old commercial. The guys came in and they I can't remember the commercial. I wish I do, but we're going to suggest this great thing, and they went in and pitched and did all this stuff, and they said, oh, that's great, and go do it. And the guys go, oh, no, we don't do what we suggest. We just propose it. And I think that's a big thing, is what is the expectation of the organization for product people? And I'm throwing a question out there as well to is that something that you as product people can guide, or are we restricted to that vision of what product people should do based on the organization? So yeah, I'm kind of answering a question with a question and throwing that out there, but I do believe that it's based on measuring these is really based on what the intent of the organization is and how that defines it, and how can the product manager help guide that in the organization.
How can the product manager help guide that in the organization?
I mean, does a company want to be innovative and they want pie in the sky stuff, or do they want to have, you know, and I'm coming from a smaller organization where we wear many hats, right? So it's like, you don't have the strategic guy, you don't have the implementation people. Well, we're working on that, but it's like, product manager, it gets back to the fact that the product manager ends up owning all of that. And it goes back to the same problems we're talking about, is you're responsible for strategic, you're responsible for maintaining the products that you've got. You're responsible for dealing with engineering. You're responsible for dealing with marketing and all the other teams. And you end up just never being successful because you're kind of doing everything. And so
You're spread too thin.
And if you're a master of a jack of all trades, you're a master of none. So anyway, that's my no real insight, just my observation.
I think that is an important insight and observation, and a really good question that you asked as well. So, how do you gauge the intent of your organization, and how can an individual contributor help to mold and shift the intent of the organization as well? That's a good question. Mark Isbitz, let's see. Let's flip it over to you, Mark.
I put my video back on now that my cat is not walking around everywhere. So I was just gonna, I agree with just about everything Amy and Charlie said. I think, towards what Amy said, I think it's very important to understand why are you innovating, or why this innovation, because I think that also helps drive the organization. So is the innovation is it truly innovating, or are you just catching up to the competitor? Is it innovating that's going to, let's say, help with process or efficiencies, et cetera? Or is it a revenue generator? And to me, at least in my organizations that I've been in, that's the number one question, right? Does it generate revenue, or does it help sell the product? And if it just helps sell the product, because it's like an efficiency, how are you going to prove that? Because it's a lot harder to get budget, get resources, get the time, et cetera, in order to do that. To Charlie's point, I think it's really difficult, Charlie. I'm kind of in the same boat you are, where, I've been in the business, not just product management, but my business of healthcare, fraud, waste, and abuse for almost 20 years. So I'm like the fraud guy in my organization, and we're very, very loosely structured with product management. So, one day I'm managing, or 1 week I'm managing JIRA tickets all week. The next week I'm doing demos all week. And then the week after that, maybe I'm writing some business requirements for my new product. I think I've mentioned this before. One thing I do is I block out at least 2 hours every week, 1 hour in the morning, 1 hour in the afternoon, twice a week on my calendar. And I just call it strategy, and show that I'm busy so that no one plans meetings or anything like that. And that's where I do things like my roadmap and my market research, because I find those are the things that always go by the wayside, because we're in a small organization too, and we're moving very, very quickly. And I'm not sure that product management has really been quite established. I think some people see us as an extension of marketing or sales. Some people see us as just an extension of the development team. And the truth is we're kind of all of that and none of that together. So it's a challenge. I think that's one of the curses of our profession, right? Is no one really understands what we are. Real quick, my daughter found this T-shirt. She likes to go thrift shopping. She found a great T-shirt, and it said, product management. We solve problems you didn't know you had in ways you couldn't imagine. And I thought that kind of sums it up.
Wow. She found that thrift shopping?
Yes, at Goodwill.
Awesome.
Here. Goodwill here in East Cobb.
That's amazing.
An unemployed product manager had decided to get rid of it. I don't know. That's great. That's awesome. Thank you, Mark. And I want that shirt. Let's see, Joel Plofsky, welcome back. Let's turn to you. And Jerry, I see your question in the chat. I'll come around to you in just a minute.
Okay. I think Charlie hit on a really important point here. When you're trying to balance yourself between innovating and executing, it's important to make sure that you're in sync with your organization, because if your organization's expectation is that you're going to be executing all the time and you spend all your time innovating, you're going to have a problem, and vice versa. So especially with your manager and making sure that their expectation, and if you have OKRs, make sure your OKRs are consistent with what with what you're planning to do. And then I think if you have that synchronicity with the organization, you then have kind of a plan or a path to go forward in terms of breaking it up and determining how much of your time and your effort and what you're going to do and plan for is going to be execution versus innovation.
Grabbing some of these notes, and everybody else feel free to jump into the Google Doc and help out with that. Let me paste the link in here for those of you who joined a little later as well. We're kind of collaboratively taking notes and captured some of your own thoughts, or if somebody else captured your thoughts in a way that you want to amend, please do jump in there and add some notes. Let's say hey to Damon.
So just being in product ops, I mean, obviously my role is, built to be tactical, but I feel like something maybe that could be helpful regardless of which, side of the spectrum you focus on is just, and I think John brought this up, is just, thinking about what innovation actually is. It's not necessarily like the big product idea. It could be just like improving a process. So I think in my day-to-day, it looks like just iterating, even if it's small, each week towards a goal that I have. So I might not be able to complete what I want to do in a week, but if I just take small bites each week, maybe after 2 to 3 months, right, I get to that goal of like a new process that just makes the whole teamwork like a little more smoother.
So taking those small bites and just taking essentially an agile mentality and
Iteration.
approach,
Yeah.
iterating towards the solution results in innovation.
Right.
That's nice. I like that. Craig Rees, also in the Midwest, further west than mid. Welcome, Craig.
Hey, thanks. Yeah, a little north of Kansas, up in Minneapolis. But yeah, it's like, I wish I had John's ability to be more strategic and out there, and I just don't, right? That's not my mindset. I'm always trying to find new things, but that's not how my brain functions. And so one of the things that I try to do is tap into the collective of everybody around me, and subtly trying to coach those on leadership and in other roles, just by asking them a little bit more about a statement that they said, or when sales is talking or others on leadership are talking, just asking more questions about what do they think we could do better with that? How could we get someplace else? What did we miss? And then trying to take all those ideas and then stitch them back together to say, well, what's the big picture? They might be completely disjointed ideas from a bunch of different meetings, but eventually it helps formulate what is it that's really going to help us move down the road a little bit farther. And I've been gone for a while from here just because I had switched onto a project that had DSU right now, and recently got off that. But I'm the first product person at the company that I'm at, so I'm spending a lot of time helping them understand what it means to have a product team and how to think a little bit farther out. Because when I stepped in, the first time I saw their roadmap, I was like, but it ends at the end of the year. What are we doing next year? What are we doing in 3 years? And so a lot. So I'm spending a lot of time trying to do that coaching to say we need to think farther. And then, like I said, just ask a lot of probing questions. And you can do that without being too intrusive, right? I don't think I've upset the apple cart too much where I'm at. So,
well, if you've ever worked with me, you'll know that I think if you haven't upset the apple cart, you're not really doing your job. So I think don't hold back too much. But so I'd also say, if you're the first product manager in the organization, you are the innovation. So congratulations. And so, and that's not entirely true, but it's a fun way to think about it. Joey Vanderven, Joey, you've got your hand up.
Hello.
Let's turn over to you.
Yeah. So I was actually looking at some of the notes, and then I was talking to Diego, and something that came to mind for me. So here I am, like I'm working on getting more innovative. In my previous role was definitely more tactical, like in the weeds all day, every day. And so as I'm trying to basically switch the way that I'm thinking, something that comes to mind for me is creating that structure around that innovation time. Like if you set aside that time, you know, how do you focus your efforts so that you get something out of it? And something that came to mind for me was, hey, what if you create, you know, to Diego's point, having something specific that you're looking at, you know, a list with your boss, or, you know, maybe it's just you creating a list for yourself, you know, if you don't have something, someone to kind of bounce it off of, for you to kind of help focus your efforts and when you're looking at, you know, innovation, because it can be hard to think of, like, in that time, you're just wandering, you know, it can be kind of difficult for you to go in any sort of direction, whereas maybe some sort of prompt or some sort of, you know, specific problem or list of problems, and you go through and start from there might be a good way to tackle it.
Love it. Absolutely. And that's taking me down a chain of thought. I'm going to circle back here. We're with near the end and kind of pull a few things together. Thank you so much, Joey. That's a great insight and a great perspective and great integration of what we're hearing today as well. So let's see here. We've got a few more hands back. I want to turn over to Jerry. Jerry, you couldn't see the hand raised button, but you have a question you want to jump on and or a comment you want to jump on and talk about that?
Yeah, just something I've learned across the years, and which is rarely talked about, is what does the company roadmap require you to generate in innovative products in order to meet their pro forma. So the company will have a projection of revenues and margins, and depending on the organization. So if you're a startup, you know, it may have a lot of expectation for innovation, and that is, and if you are aligned with that, then that's going to drive how you spend your time. If you're a Global 100 public stock corporation, maybe not so much. I mean, maybe you're more concerned with organic growth and not being disintermediated by, you know, a SaaS startup or something like that. So your innovation time, your thinking, your focus, your R&D and what have you is going to be focused on defending your position. You know, getting aligned with leadership on what they expect for future revenues and margin, and figuring out how to map that to how much and what kind of innovation you need and when, I think helps a product manager then figure out how to balance innovation and execution.
That's a really, really good question and series of questions to consider. To me, it comes back to, you know, one of the things we've been kind of circling around is two themes that I'm hearing. It's innovation as a set of activities, and I'm trying to speak slowly so that if I max headroom on you, I don't lose the meaning. Is innovation a set of activities that you do? Is it a fixed point in time that you set aside to be innovative and do innovation? Or is it the result of a process? And that's, you know, what Damon said really kind of honed that in for me, and Joey kind of turning around to the habits as well, focusing on the habits. You know, we talk about innovation as this thing to do, but I find myself wondering and looking at apples of saying, is innovation really better described as the result of a bunch of habits or a bunch of patterns that we create that deliver new solutions to problems, better solutions to problems that we already have or maybe have newly discovered. I think that problem space is really an important aspect of that. There is a really interesting, a really great quote by Aristotle. It's attributed to Aristotle. I don't know if he actually said it. I wasn't there. But he said, "We are what we repeatedly do. Excellence, then, is not an act, but a habit." And I think that applies to innovation as well, in that we are innovative when we do the things that lead us to insights and to create things that solve problems in powerful ways. I came across, when I was kind of preparing for today's session, I came across an article that, and I'll put it in the notes as well, but it had some habits for people who want to create a pattern of innovation. And one of the habits was really thought-provoking for me. And specifically the author was, I will tell, Philippe de Ritter. The pattern, the habit was to challenge yourself to discover one pattern every day. So just look at things around you and make comparisons and discover how things fit together. The example he gave was there are startups out there in car sharing and ride sharing. And there are companies that have offices with a flex desk or a hot desk type of environment. So this is a pattern of two different examples of people not owning a single thing, but sharing access to a thing. So if I think about the idea of that pattern of not owning but sharing access, does that lead me to think about solutions to the problems that I'm considering in different ways? So that was an interesting exercise to challenge yourself to. I think the expectation is that's really hard to start doing. It's a really hard exercise as an example, but the more you do it, the better you get at it. And I'll paste that link into the notes as well. So I'm going to shift back over here to, looks like Charlie's got his hand up next. Before I do that, I want to remind you, before you leave or when you leave today, do go over to the survey, which is linked on the resources page. And I'm going to paste it here in the notes in the chat as well for you to find. But let us know how we're doing, how the session was for you. Everybody who fills out the survey and leaves their contact information will be entered in a drawing at the end of May to choose one of the books off the Product Coffee bookshelf at productcoffee.com/bookshelf. So you can choose off that list, and I'll send you a copy of it on me, just for taking the time to fill out the survey. So Charlie, let me pivot over to you now.
Since we're running out of time, I won't go on a long-winded thing, but I do think one of the things that I've seen in my career recently is, and when I first started in product about 20 years ago, product owners weren't on the scene yet, but now you got product managers versus product owners. And I think this is a big topic that falls into this, is that in organizations I've been at, product manager, thou art strategic, product manager, thou art tactical. So if you need some topic ideas, Jason, I think that'd be a great discussion about product managers versus product owners that could segment into this. And I have seen that, but in some organizations, they don't believe in that. The product manager is the product owner, and some they want to completely separate it. So again, it comes down to the organization and what, I'm sorry, I missed who said, Diego, or one of you guys, I'm sorry, I missed who said that they're tactical. And like, that's, then a product owner role may be the way that you go toward that route until you become strategic. But anyway, I know there's some other people, but a topic for future consideration is the difference between those two and how, organizations should maybe look into that. Some organizations don't like that structure, but again, it'll be a whole another topic. So there you go.
It absolutely is, and it's a great topic for us to hit here as well. So thanks, Charlie. Let's see who's next here on the list. Joel, back to you.
Yeah. So in terms of setting time for innovating to innovate, that's a concept I can't really wrap my head around. If I set time in my schedule and I sat there thinking, okay, now it's time to innovate, I would innovate nothing. Really, the way I look at it is, to be innovative, you have to consume information. You have to see what your competitors are doing, talk to your clients, get out there and get as much information as possible. And then when I innovate, it's not when I put a time on my calendar, it's when I'm walking the dogs or in the shower or hanging out on the deck, or it's just sometime when my mind is free to wander is when the ideas come.
Yeah. And part of that comes from filling yourself up with inputs to synthesize and develop insights from, and then having the quiet time or the focused time to actually internalize those thoughts. So yeah, absolutely agree, Joel. Thank you. Mark, back to you.
Yes, I'll be quick too. A couple of things that people mentioned. One, what you mentioned, Jason, I think is very interesting, because maybe it's more of like getting into good processes that innovation kind of comes out that way, right? So little things like win-loss analysis. The thing I talked about last week about your forming advisory councils, user groups, doing your market research, sitting down with sales regularly. Maybe it's more just getting into a good rhythm, so you're doing the right things, where innovation, because there is no one way to innovate, right? So maybe those things kind of together, if you're doing them on a regular basis, that will spur the innovation. But to me, the last thing is what we kind of started out with, which is, what's your organization's definition of product management? Charlie, talked about product owner. I'm a vice president in my organization, and we talked about having product owners, and they started listing. I said, well, who's the product owner for fraud, waste, and abuse then? And our CTO said, well, I thought you were. And to me, I'm not a product owner. Then the final thing is, I read an article a long time ago, and we tried to implement this at LexisNexis, and it probably works better with bigger organizations. But the idea is that if you have, say, business analyst role, a product manager role, and let's say a director, VP level role, it should be, 80% of the business analyst time should be tactical, 20% strategic. The product manager should be 50-50. And then the director, VP should be 80-20 the other way, 80% strategic, 20% tactical. That's more theoretical, but we worked it pretty well at LexisNexis. That's just a way to think about it too.
Thank you, Mark. We got time for a couple more here, so I'm going to switch. Amy, let's go back to Amy.
All right. Just to kind of synthesize what a couple things people had said. Right, like innovation doesn't occur during that 2-hour innovation block that you set on your calendar, right? That's more of the I needed 2 hours to myself to do some research, to look at all the ideas that people had thrown at me through the past 2 weeks, and what my customers are saying, and what sales is saying, and what developers are saying, and look for those patterns. And then maybe all you do is have an idea board. I have 10 whiteboards, right? So maybe they're just all there on the whiteboard. And then that's part of the pattern, right? We were talking about patterns and habits, is that you have to set aside that time to really just look at things and research things. And then you're right. Innovation always comes when I'm in the shower, or taking a walk, right? Or there are so many times I've had to pull the car over on my drive home from work and write down an idea on my phone, because I finally had 30 seconds to settle my mind. And I was like, this is the answer, right? So it's more of keeping the habits of making sure that you're thinking about things in a different way. And then all of a sudden it'll pop into your head. So that's it.
Yep. If anybody has an Apple Watch or a smartwatch, you can also literally dictate right into it and just say, hey, remind me and state your thought. And then the trick is building in time to go back and look at your notes application or your reminders application on your phone or on your watch and actually transcribe those later. But I can't tell you how many times I've been driving in the car and have just pulled my watch up to my face because I had an epiphany I wanted to capture or remembered something I wanted to capture, and thrown it into a list to go process later. So it's a great call out. But you're right. It's creating the time and space, but also making sure that you have access to the tools to capture the outcome when you have that moment of thought as well. I think there are a couple of questions floating around here that we may not get to today, but a couple of questions that came up in chat. If you're not watching that, Evan asked, "Can we innovate more as an individual, as part of a team?" And then Jeff built on that with, "How do we as individuals or teams align our innovation efforts with the overall business innovation needs in general?" And I think when we come back on the 26th with Steve Johnson, we're going to really get into the essence of what it means to identify problems. And one of the things that we talk about a lot is really finding the right problem, falling in love with the right problem. And that helps to focus you on finding the right solutions in general. So I'm really looking forward to that discussion on the 26th as well. We are about out of time today. It's been a great discussion. These roundtables are always a lot of fun. They just kind of go in whatever direction we take them. I definitely, there's pages and pages of notes here. A page and a half of notes here. So I guess that's a little bit more accurate statement, but with a lot of links to other resources as well. So if you didn't grab the Google Doc, be sure you do. If you haven't hit the survey, it's in the chat. Please make sure that you complete our survey. I would really encourage everyone to think about, personally, my perspective is innovation as a process, as not as a process, but as the result of other processes and other habits you have. If you're carving out time to talk to customers and listen to customers, if you're carving out time to review what your competitors are doing in the market, and you're carving out time to define your problems well, and then iterating, to Damon's point, iterating towards a solution that you have in mind, or iterating, taking the next step and the next step and the next tiny step, that can lead you to an outcome, which is innovation, which can potentially be disruptive, which we didn't get to as well today. But I'd love to have a conversation in the future about innovation versus disruption, where they overlap and where they differ as well. But thanks everyone for coming today. It's been a great session.